Okay.
A life. Real life.
So, good morning, everyone. We'll begin with the reflections on universal well-being. 大家早，我们先来念诵观想四无量心。May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action, and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their home. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, cause such acts, they will be the heirs. So good morning again. We're here now at Redwood Vihara. You could say in constant motion. Hopefully in our hearts we're in constant stillness. And another thing that we just started was a noble friendship pod with Service Space, an online retreat on what does it mean to be a good friend, or maybe a better, what does it mean to be a noble friend? And yesterday, as a group, we watched a video by Kristen Neff, who has been researching self-esteem and self-compassion. And so she describes what's the difference between self-esteem and self-compassion. And for me, this talk was very insightful, because one of these aha moments, like, wow, I grew up with such an emphasis on self-esteem. And in her talk, she shows what are the drawbacks in living a life based on self-esteem. And I think it's really worth watching and reflecting, because I realized how much of that self-esteem mindset I brought into my spiritual practice. And so maybe just to give a little bit of an introduction to what she said. She said, what's the definition of self-esteem? I don't know if people remember. It's something like our global self-evaluation of ourselves, of our self-worth. Am I good? Am I bad? Oftentimes comparing with other people. And self-esteem often comes from, being the best in the group. So I'm good. I'm valued. And that gives me a sense of self-esteem. But if I'm, the worst of the group, or she said, if we're just average, then we feel like, I'm not really important. I'm not special. I'm just ordinary. And our self-esteem plummets. She makes a kind of a joke. In America, if you're in school and you're average, it's not good. If I came home from school and came back home to my family, I said, I just got an average grade, and I'm just the average in the class, probably it wouldn't be so encouraged. I remember at a Buddha Root Farm retreat, one of the kids joked that in an Asian family, of course this is a joke, so take it with a grain of salt, but she said, in grades, an A is what? A is average. B is bad. C is can't have dinner. Can't have dinner. And D is deported. And F is find another family. But when she made the joke, it was only a little bit funny because all the kids were nodding their heads. So, yeah, I know that. I know that A is expected, and A really means what? Above average, excellent. And so we have this culture growing up where we just have to succeed, comparing to everyone else. And he says that's really maybe helpful in the short term. We feel a little bit of this kind of sense of importance and kind of valued. But when things go wrong, say we fail, that's when our self-esteem mindset actually really fails us. We begin to criticize ourselves, saying, you're no good. How can you be so X? And he says, just think about how we criticize ourselves. Oftentimes, it's a lot worse than how we talk to our friends, even talk to people we don't like. And so she said, self-compassion is much more beneficial. And I think self-compassion, as she defines, is pretty much loving kindness. It's much, much better than self-esteem as a way to motivate ourselves. And she broke into 3 components, which I think we can also reflect on the spiritual path. So the first one is actually being kind to ourselves rather than harsh on ourselves. Right? Rather than when we make a mistake, we get angry and say, how can I do this? How can I be so stupid? How can I fail like this? I'm never going to make any success. Right? This kind of harsh language. Actually be kind. Wow, that's really painful. That hurts. And not having to do anything, just allowing that pain to be, is holding it with this kind of gentle care. That's, you see a mom caring for a child who really can care for the child. Oftentimes it's just the mom's presence, caring presence, that heals. It's not the mom trying to fix the child to make everything okay. Oftentimes what happens then is the mom gets equally frantic and the kid gets even more anxious because the mom is also frantic, right? So can we just take care of ourselves? So this, I think, applies to meditation or any spiritual practice. Are we evaluating ourselves as we practice? Was that a good meditation? Am I a good cultivator? Am I meditating longer than the people around me? Am I the best? Maybe that might lead to some short-term progress. But over time, I think what happens is it can feel very lonely. It feels very lonely at the top. It feels very lonely when we're unable to connect with other people and have to be special. And even worse, that harsh inner critic that's constantly pushing us is not a good friend. It's actually a kind of inner tyrant that never lets us rest. So the first one is, can we be a good friend to ourselves? Right? Treat ourselves with kindness. The second one she says is, she calls it common humanity. So rather than being different than other people, rather than being special, we actually see that we're all subject to suffering. old age and sickness and death affects us all. We all fail. We all succeed at times. We're joyful sometimes, we're sad sometimes. So rather than saying, I'm special, just say, I am a sentient being, subject to suffering, wishing to be happy, just like everyone else. I think this reflection helps us dissolve this mindset between self and other. Self-esteem reifies, creates boundaries between me and other people. But this loving kindness melts those away. And so as we meditate, rather than feeling like I have to be better than other people and be special, and I'm a really good cultivator, and other people in the world, they're not as spiritual as I am. Actually, there was a study, it's interesting, saying people who meditate and do these things like develop this kind of spiritual pride, thinking that I am actually a better person than other people because I meditate. It's like, okay, that's when our self-esteem kind of takes over our spiritual practice. But to say, wow, when I practice, I feel I can deeply connect to everyone and be in service. The last one she said was just mindfulness, being in the present. So we're right here, right now. Rather than judging ourselves from some other future vantage point, or lost in some kind of story from the past, maybe that our parents gave us, or that we've developed. Rather, we're right here, right now, just able to accept what's arising. Again, that's meditation. Right? If we're sitting here and we're just constantly lost in future projections of who I'm supposed to be, or who my parents want me to be, we can say we're not really having the opportunity to deepen our meditation practice. We're just reinforcing the kind of self-narrative that we've created for ourselves. So the Buddha taught skillful mindfulness is just being in the present, observing what's arising without judgment. And as we do that more and more, we find that we have a lot more freedom, because we're not just trapped in our reactivity, in the one story that we've created for ourselves, but that we have choices. And we start to walk on this path of loving kindness or self-compassion. We begin to realize, well, we can actually respond to what's arising with kindness, and with this kind of reflection on this interdependence of our lives with everyone else. So that was day one of this Noble Friendship Pod, was learning how do we befriend ourselves? How do we let go of this, you could say, inner tyrant, or this game of self-esteem that we play with ourselves? And she has a good exercise, which I'll leave here with, that people can do if you wish, as to reflect, what are some things that you use to evaluate yourself with? Maybe it's your good looks, maybe it's your intelligence, maybe it's your spiritual practice, maybe it's your ability to meditate long hours. Just reflect, what is something that you use to evaluate yourself with? And then the question she asks is, around this place that you're using to evaluate yourself, do you want to be better than others? Or do you want to be connected with others? I think that this might be enough of a reflection. So, encourage everyone that today maybe you can really try to befriend yourself, to start there. That sometimes we can be our worst enemy if we're not really kind. If we really can find our good friend in ourselves, then actually, life actually becomes a lot more pleasant. Life becomes a lot more enjoyable. Okay, so let's do 3 steps, 1 bow. And for those on the pod, it's day 2.